like to introduce the new Assistant Director for Office of Aging, who has a few things to update you on.
But before you go, can I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
Deputy Director.
I am the deputy.
Deputy Director, okay? No more Assistant Director.
Yeah, the deputy. Thank you. I got to speak to each of you. A few quick reminders, things happening in Ulster County. This blue sheet is a reminder about our survey. It is online right now. For people who would like to share thoughts, feelings, how they'd like to see the Office for Aging improve, we would love your feedback. So this is the Survey Monkey. It gives you the address. I'm going to leave sheets in the back for you. That's the survey, and that's free to get feedback from you about what you want, what you like, what you don't like. Important reminder, Medicare open enrollment is coming up October 15th through December 7th. That's the time when you have an opportunity to change your prescription drug plan, or if you're in a managed care plan, to change that. We have counselors, one-on-one assistance to help you with those decisions and how to navigate that. I'm also going to say, you guys are the mobile units. You're out and about. If this is information that you're thinking might be good for somebody else who's not here, please take it. Take it, because it's so important for people to know. Office for Aging is there to help you with your insurance. And that's the bright orange. That'll be in the back as well. And upcoming upcoming seminar at the end of the month up in Kingston at the mall in the community room. It's falls prevention. It's going to be a terrific little program. We have somebody who will be discussing exercises you can do, activities you can do, home improvements to help prevent falls. So that's the fall prevention, and that's a nice opportunity if you know anybody that's a little unstable. And sometimes these are conversations that are hard to have with our loved ones, but this is a great way for them to get that information. And there are some great giveaways that'll be given away, including night lights, shoe horns, things like that. So I just wanted to make sure everybody got that. Thank you all for signing up for the email list. We will make sure that you get this information as well via email. And I'm excited to hear the doctor. So let me sit down. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, everybody. My name is Linda Mockler. I've been coordinating senior activities on the New Halls for the past year, and Sharon and I are presenting the conference. So without further ado, we'll start with the first speaker, who is a gerontologist, and Sharon's going to introduce him. So welcome, everybody.
I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Lawrence T. Force. He is probably my best friend for the last 30 years.
And that has not been easy. On both parts.
Did you sign a waiver?
We did. In blood.
In blood. We have a very long and extensive history, but one of the things about Dr. Force that I find very impressive is that not only is he an authority in the field of gerontology, but he also is a caregiver for his mother, who is 96 years old.
Who I spent some time with this morning. She's in a nursing home in Cabrini, down in Dobbs Ferry. And she lived independently until she was 92. So first of all, I'd like to thank you and you and you for the introduction. But I'm always taken by when I hear these introductions, and then when I listen to what my wife said this morning on the way out. She said, "Hey, Mr. Big Shot, pick up your socks on the way out." But as Sharon said, I'm in the field, and I'm in the field. The youngest son of a 96-year-old gal, little Irish gal, who lived at home until she was 92 with AIDS. We had some AIDS in there. And I'd taken a sabbatical. I used to smoke a pipe, and I'm sitting on my porch, I'm not teaching, it's great, I'm just, working, pondering, whatever, writing, and the next thing you know, my brother calls and tells me the police are at Mom's place. and she fell into the shower. So I go down to New Rochelle, to the hospital where they were taking her, and I'm thinking, I hope that she didn't break her hip, because that's a game changer. And she didn't break her hip, but she fractured her neck, which cascaded us into an unbelievable amount of angst. And 92 years old, do you operate, do you not operate, do you try to do it pain management? We're going to do pain management and a neck brace. We had her in a rehab for a while, and the aide comes in, my brother was there, and asked my mother, who was really out of it at that point with medication, did she want to shower? And my brother said, well, how would you shower her with that neck brace on? And she said, well, I would take the neck brace off. Well, you can't do that. So we got her out of there. They decided to operate. Then she went down to this great place down in the Hebrew Home for the Aged down in Riverdale. And one day, she's coming out of the medication, she looks at me, she says, where am I? And I said, you're here at the Hebrew Home. And she said, does that mean I have to become Jewish? And I said, no, it doesn't mean you have to become Jewish. So the opportunity to stay there was right there. She could have stayed there. But I realized how important, which I didn't think about, how important the religious symbols that she was used to were to her. And I had a friend at Cabrini, and it's all about who knows who. And can you help me out? And I just got off the phone with my friend because I saw her there today. So we were able to get her into Cabrini. First couple of days, she said to me, you know a lot of people around here. I said, yeah, I do, because I do some training there. And she said, so you put me here to die, huh? And I would rather have been hit by somebody who was 6'10" rather than answer that question. So I came home and I thought about it, and went back the next day, and she hit me with the same question. And I said to her, no, you're not here to die, you're here to live. And you're here because we want you to live. And I said, why don't you come up and live with us? And she said to me, because we wanted her to come and live with us as an option. And she said, I'm not going to the country. Okay, so she was very clear that she wasn't coming to Dutchess County. Today, fast forward, it'll be 3 years in November. She's in better shape today than she was 3 years ago living independently. And the reason is because of the socialization. She plays bingo 3 times a week. She goes to church. Right now, she's probably getting her hair done. It's the best of a bad situation. I worked for the state of New York for over 20 years, and I knew I was going to retire because I had developed a presence in the academic world, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College, and I run a center on aging there. And I knew I was going to leave the state system. So I got a call from this group out in Colorado, and they wanted me to come out and do a presentation to their executive directors. So there's a lot of things you can't say when you work for the state. You're representing an agency, you're representing a political arena, so you can't say. So it was very freeing that the day that I got out there, I had retired 2 days before, so I could say anything I wanted. And I said, I'm here to tell you that I can say anything I wanted. And what I'm here to tell you is that they were good people trying to do good things. It's not like we had a lot of money on the state level that we were holding off to the side, or the county level. We never expected the demographics to explode the way they did. And the resources just can't keep pace with them. When I worked with the state, I had a friend, mentor, who I still have, named Matt Janicki. And he's world-renowned in the field of aging and intellectual disabilities. And he was promoting this aging in place. Aging in place is a nice paradigm, but it's a bureaucratic nightmare. Bureaucratic nightmare. Because you can't keep pace. You can't keep retrofitting everything in order to keep up with the elderly population, the older population. The thing that's different is that your group, the AAAs, when they were started, 60 was old. They were started in 1963 under Lyndon Johnson. That was considered to be old. I go to a barber now, which I've been going to for years, and he wants to know, do I want the senior discount? And I refuse. I'm not taking the senior discount. But I also tell you, when I hit Metro North, I'm the first guy to hit senior. I'll be 62 in December. And it just, 62 today is a lot different than 62 back in the 60s. The AAAs, the Area Agency on Aging, so glad to see that you're present in this type of arena, Because in an ideal world, you really should be the entry into the system. You know, but it's not an ideal world, and people come to the system through so many different ways. A colleague of mine and myself ended up getting a National Institute of Health grant about 5 years ago to do a survey of the national AAAs. And because I came from government, I thought everything was like New York, that every state had a AAA that was county represented, you know, government county employees. New York's one of the few states that has government delivering aging services. You don't like the AAA in Ulster County, you're out of luck. It's like not liking the DMV, you're out of luck. But in Florida, if you don't like the AAA, they're nonprofits, and there's another one across the street or around the corner. So it's much more competitive, and it's a whole different way of doing business. But the fact is that they're not prepared for what we're bringing to the table. You know, what my 94, 95-year-old next door neighbor wanted to know about a feeding schedule. Now my cohort, Sharon's cohort, many of our cohorts are coming up and they want to know about AIDS testing and drug addiction and things that you weren't prepared to handle. So the world is different. I want to tell you a little story, and I want to tell you two little taglines. When I went out to Colorado, they asked me to create a speech that would be provocative and with title. And the name of the title that I came up with is, "Hey, Mr. Big Shot, you talking to me?" Because my biggest fear is that at 90, 95 years old, I'd be in a nursing home and some guy would walk down the hall with a tie on and a clipboard and look at me in a very patronizing way and tap me on the shoulder and say, "You know, how you doing?" And I would be looking up saying, "Hey, Mr. Big Shot, you talking to me?" Without any understanding of the history that I've had or you've had. Aging in America is a process of liquidation. It's a liquidation of finances, it's a liquidation of voice, it's a liquidation of power and presence. And I think that if we're really talking about trying to figure out how to stop that, it comes to us. 2, 3 years ago, I was asked to go up to Woodstock to do a 40th celebration of aging, of Woodstock. And the name of the presentation was Sex, Rock and Roll, and Aging. You know, because it's really kind of like the next revolution for us. If you don't want to be treated old, then here's my advice, then don't act old, okay? If you don't want to be treated old, then don't act like you are. Don't give up your voice. Don't give up your ability to make decisions. Because the fastest growing part of the population today are people over the age of 100. We're living longer. Some people debate we might be living longer in more disabled states. That's an interesting, sad debate. But the fact is we are living longer, and I think we have to prepare for that. I want to give you another quote that just came out of a discussion the other day. And this is an interesting quote. And the quote is, "Dad, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're not going home." Can you imagine what that must really feel like? You know, I had my students one time do an overview of nursing homes. What's the average living space? The average living space, what do you think? Can I ask you? And I'd like to make this interactive. How big is the place that you live in now? 2,000 square feet, 1,500, 3,000, 900? 900, okay, 900, okay. How'd you get here? You drove, you got a car, you walked here, you got a car outside, you got a pocketbook, you got possessions, you got a wallet, you got credit cards. You can set the climate in your house the way you want to set it typically. You have ideas of where you're going to go after this. Can you imagine waking up in a room that's 8 by 10 that you're sharing with somebody? And the major choice that you have is only what type of dessert you want? And then we want to know why people are aggressive, depressed, sad, whatever, in nursing homes? Can you imagine what that must really feel like? Can you imagine just for a minute somebody telling you later on this afternoon, "Listen, I'm sorry, but you can't go home. You just can't go home." The devastation that really brings, you know, when you really think about it. And there's really no reason why you can't go home if we start to build an infrastructure that is supportive. 4 or 5 years ago, Sharon and I and about 4 other people were involved in a project out in New Mexico. New Mexico had been ramped up for a class action lawsuit. In 1970, they had deinstitutionalized about 700 people. Fast forward, somebody raised their hand out of that 700 people, 1 or 2 people, and said they have been abandoned by the state. Lawyers love that. It's called Willowbrook. Willowbrook, except it's in New Mexico, which means it's a class action lawsuit. They're going to get the state. They're going to have lots of money. So the state of New Mexico hired a private investigator to find those 700 people, and they found about 530 of them. Our role was to go out and assess them. The interesting thing is we found that the people that had not received formal services were doing better than the people that did receive formal services. Mm-hmm. Because with formal services comes stigma, oversight, and regulation. You drove a county car here today?
I did not.
Okay, but you have access to a county car? I'm assuming it's white, gray?
Yeah.
Okay, can you imagine what that must feel like when you go home and there's a white or gray car sitting? I mean, your group is benign, but adult protective services, child protective services, public government in your private life. How that must feel. I tell my students that we ask our clients to do things that we can't do ourselves. I was at a case review a number of years ago for a family that asked me to be their advocate. And because it wasn't the same agency, I could speak freely because I wasn't representing an agency. And their son had been institutionalized, emergency-wise, in Rockland Psychiatric. And he wanted out, and they wanted him out. And now he's on a locked unit because it was concerned about self-abuse and everything else. And the social worker comes in, and she was extremely heavy. And she sat down. And the parents said, we want to be able to get our son discharged. And she said, I don't see that happening. He's got to keep his room clean for 30 days, and he's got to drop 15 pounds before we start talking. Now, as an advocate, not representing any agency, you can say whatever you want. And I raised my hand, I said, how many of us at this table wouldn't want to lose 15 pounds in a month? So we ask our clients to do things that we can't do ourselves. A lot of times we keep our clients captive. Agencies have a tendency to over-regulate because they're concerned about risk. What we found in New Mexico is people that were left to their own devices in their community were doing better than people that were over-regulated by agencies. So we created a paradigm called naturally occurring living communities, or NOLCs. In the gerontological field, there are 2 paradigms that are pretty hot right now. One is called livable communities, where you cut the curbs, you make the streets a little bit, shorter, you make the sidewalks bigger. That's from AARP promoting that. And the other one that's been out there for a while is naturally occurring retirement communities. My mother lived in an apartment building, so other people lived in the apartment building that were elderly. Instead of moving them out, you bring the services in. But both of them require an upload of some type of funding, whether it be cutting curbs or bringing in services. With the naturally occurring living community, the only thing you have to do is change your attitude. Change the way you look at your community. There are enough supports out there in the community, but we have to really think about putting on those 3D glasses and looking at the world differently. An example, the Aging Network is not just the County Office for Aging, but the Aging Network as a whole is always talking about we have a shortage of hands, we don't have enough people for presence, not enough home health care nurses, and yet I'm at a college where there's 2,500 students that are ready to go, ready to be present, ready to not work at McDonald's or work at the mall. We need to be thinking about another way of connecting that workforce of college students to be present for an older population. That's your naturally occurring living community. Domino's Pizza a couple of years ago was applauded because one of their workers noticed that Edna did not order a pepperoni pie for 3 days in a row. She took it upon herself, the employee, to go to Edna's house, look in the window, find Edna laying on the floor, and we were applauding this. I grew up, they were called neighbors. Okay, neighbors kind of like, you kind of looked out for each other. Sharon and I have been friends for 30 years. How I met Sharon's a quick aside. Right down there in Highland, I was working as a consulting grant writer for an agency. They were in a warehouse. Sharon was hired as the executive director, and she made that place sing into a multi-million-dollar agency. And we developed we're very much alike in many of our ways. We talk to each other a couple of times minimum per week. I go to the gym, Sharon's walking the dogs. We don't say, I'm going to call you on Tuesday or whatever, but we've developed a natural connection to be present for each other. They're called neighbors, they're called friends. And sometimes in our isolated high-tech world, we lose sight of that. So one of the things I'd like to be able to leave here today with is this discussion about a naturally occurring living community. To be able to challenge you to go out and be able to think of new ways of doing business within your community. I've been working on this thing about aging loudly. You know, aging with, you know, get up, get voice, get empowered. And I wanted to share with you something, I just have to bring it up here, about the pledge, the Aging Loudly Pledge. And what the Aging Loudly Pledge is just give me a second. Larry Force. How's my hearing?
Very good.
Somebody said, what's his name again? Okay. Here it is. Let's see if this comes up. Should come up. So here's the pledge. We will change the way that our society treats, values, respects, and views older adults in this country. There'll be no more tolerance of indignity. We will not be marginalized. We will not be liquidated emotionally or financially. We will not tolerate to be spoken about as though we don't exist, as though we're invisible. If you have something to say to us, you tell us. And one more thing, don't patronize us because we're serious. Don't exclude us because of an artificial indicator of age. The days of isolation are over. The days of being victimized and excluded by policies, programs, and opportunities are history. We'll make our own decisions, we'll direct our own destiny, and we'll live the lives that we want to live. Understand that we do this for us, we do this in memory of those that have gone before us, in isolation, misery, detachment, and despair, and we do this for you. Because our efforts, although may seem radical, will reshape the attitudes and policies that imprison older adults in the United States. Our voice will not be muted, our visions will not be diluted, and we will go to whatever means it takes for you, the citizens of this free country, to understand that we're serious. We will challenge you on every front possible. We'll meet you on the front pages of media. We'll meet you in the hallways of courts and legislative systems. We'll meet you in any venue that's required. My friends, get up. Your work is not done. Reclaim your wishes, your voice, your desires, your dignity, your life for yourself and for those that you love. Age like it matters because it does. The reality is get up. You know, the idea is that age is an artificial indicator. You cannot be framed out by your age. You know, because what looks like, if you've seen one person that's 50 years old, you've seen one person. Not all 50-year-olds look like that. So the fact is, as you're starting to, you know, think about what's next, it's never over. People ask me, will I ever retire? Never. What am I going to do? It's like divorcing myself. Plus I spent a summer with my wife, who's a school psychologist. There is zero way that we could retire together, okay, without, you know, somebody's moving, okay, because we just have a whole different way of doing business, you know, and I think, you know, there's an adapting process. You know, the one thing, I mean, aging is not about frailty and decline. Aging is about adapting. So the fact is that, you know, if you're 40, I mean, I do some work around my house. I'm not, you know, an ace carpenter, but I can work my way around that arena. But the tools that I have available today are more electric tools than they were manual tools that I had available in my early 30s. So I adapt. You know, I used to run. I don't run now, so now I walk. I adapt. I have to tell you that, you know, from what I see personally, exercise is extremely important. You know, I joined Planet Fitness a year ago, and I go every single morning at 6:30. I now have gym buddies. It's $10 a month. It's a socialization process. I feel stronger. My golf game is better. I feel more alert, and I'm not fretting about the fact that, you know, winter is setting in, because I really do believe that I'm a victim of that seasonal affective disorder, where it's like a hibernation. I hate the darkness of winter, but I'm not saying I'm looking forward to it. But last year was very manageable, because of the fact that I'm doing things to increase the biochemistry that's going to make me feel better about, you know, limited light. I think that there's a responsibility here. You know, I didn't plan this, but as I sat down, I get this email that I just checked, and it's from a woman. She said, "Hi, it was nice to meet you at this conference last week. How's your mother? I'm having a difficult time managing the care of a bedridden 92-year-old veteran friend of mine. He has limited means, wants to stay in his house. For the last few years, he's lived with a caregiver couple who got room and board. Problem is that that's not working out. Apparently, this doesn't come under the jurisdiction of any agency, although I got some advice from Adult Protective Services. Any thoughts would be appreciated." Well, why can't he live in his house? I mean, I don't think that, in my particular case, and look, I thought about this. I'm out here advocating for nursing homes are not the answer, but my mother's in a nursing home, so there's a reality to this. When Matt Janicki worked for the state, he was promoting aging in place. First thing I did when he came in was I got rid of aging in place and called it aging with dignity. Because I think that, that platform of aging with dignity makes much more sense. Nursing homes might be needed at a certain point. Doesn't mean they're needed all the time. But the fact is, in my mother's particular case, there's zero way she could live independently. I think she would have been dead by now if she went home and we just loaded up with AIDS. Because what I see that the currency is that it's the social currency. She said to me something this morning that does give me concern. She said, "I feel nervous." That's not her, and I told the nurses this too. She said she feels nervous. Now, is it impending that she's coming to the end stage of her life? I really hope not. I really hope not, because she's really a special little gal. But the fact is that what she's only hoping for is a good death. And her view of a good death is no pain. She's embedded in a religious belief. Other people can go in there and punch holes through this religious belief. It doesn't matter. She's holding onto her rosary beads. She has a belief and that works for her. And that's a beautiful thing. But the fact is that in that particular case, we needed intensive care. And she had options. We can load you up with AIDS. You can come live with us. We can take a look at this. And you know what she told me the other day? I really like this place. I like this place a lot. And because of the fact that it's the social currency stuff. So when Sharon asked me to come up here today to talk a little while, I told her I could, but I couldn't stay for the complete time. But I could come because it's an opportunity to deliver a message. And the message is about this naturally occurring living community process. That you don't have to bring in the bulldozers in order to live in your community. You just have to change the way you look at what types of resources are out there. We should be intently training the postal workers to be eyes and ears of the community. So therefore, if they're delivering the mail and it starts to stack up a little bit, maybe there's a problem here. The Alzheimer's Association, and they become our agents of support. The Alzheimer's Association has done a wonderful job historically of training bank tellers and beauticians, because they're the frontline people sometimes when somebody comes up and they're disoriented and they're taking out more money. Going to a beautician is like going to a professional confession. How many stories have you told your beautician, in confidence or quasi-confidence? And a beautician might be able to pick up on the fact that, something's not right here. Or the post office person where there's, lots of mail there. Or the bank teller where somebody's coming in. I had an uncle with Alzheimer's disease. He bought a car. That's great. On Monday. But guess what? On Wednesday, he bought another car. Because he forgot that he bought a car on Monday. And it was only because of the fact that he was involved in that community and this is before all of these laws of the return policy, that they were willing to say, we'll take that second car back. Because he forgot that he bought a car. He went to another dealership and bought another car. Things happen, and I think that as we start to think about this, how we're going to age, and I just want to leave you with this. When I worked for the state, somebody said to me, did I see the documentary by PBS on Dr. Bill Thomas? I hadn't. So I called PBS, this is before these downloadable things, and they sent me the documentary. Bill Thomas is an advocate who lives up in Utica, Harvard-trained MD, who has 2 children that are severely disabled. And he's going around the country now challenging nursing homes like Reagan did, tear down that wall. He's going around the country challenging nursing homes to tear down their walls. Get rid of the big structures, make small group homes, let people live in small group homes, bring in the dogs, bring in the smell of food, bring in, the plants. That sounds like the system that we worked with for years. And that was the OMRDD system of having small group homes on Medicaid dollars, living 4 or 5, maybe 6 people in a home. He has 2 children that are severely disabled. It was a very powerful movie, and I'd encourage you to look at his stuff. He's created this thing called the Eden Project, okay, or the Greenhouse Project. He calls them both. And it's about, challenging the way that we should do business. So I called him, and I said, Doc, listen, I looked at your film. It was very, very powerful, very, very poignant. I said, but when it's all said and done, it looks like our homes that you're promoting. And he said, I am. There are existing models out there that know how to keep people in the community sharing resources. As I was talking to you before, my youngest kid is living in Brooklyn now. The rent is astronomical. But I'm not sure there's anybody living in Brooklyn in his age group that's not sharing an apartment with somebody. So the rent gets cut in half. So I think we have to be thinking even about, shared resources, shared housing. Is there a way? Sharon and I have never talked about this directly, but I guarantee you that we will age successfully in place together, okay, within shooting distance of each other. Now, does that mean at some point we're going to be sharing a kitchen? I don't know. Right now, but it does mean that, could I see us, and we've never talked about this, but could I see us sharing a plot of land? Why not? Why not? There's a guy running around in our area talking about eco-housing, eco-cottages, bringing in these cottages when they're needed. I think it's a wonderful thing. And I had a conversation with him earlier this week, and one of the things I said to him is, we need to start thinking now about your industry, how to go about developing those types of supports for people that live in urban settings. Because not everybody has a parcel of land you can pull a cottage up onto. My mother lived in a home an apartment building where she probably didn't touch the 3rd shelf of her cabinets in her kitchen probably for about 8 or 9 years. Why couldn't we have those kitchen cabinets come down electronically? People struggle with opening up their windows. Why can't we have windows that open up like car windows? We need to rethink the way that we're building things in order to keep people in the community as long as possible. And the Futurist, I remember when I was, and I'll leave you with this, 11, 12 years old, watching The Futurist on TV. It's a clip. Someday they said, everybody's going to have their own phone number. How is that possible? Someday they said, you're going to pay for TV. I'm thinking they're going to put like a coin box on your TV. Someday they said, everybody's going to be paying for water. Why would I buy water when it's free? Well, how am I going to have my own phone number when I'm doing this rotary thing? What are you talking about with paying for TV? As I now have a cell phone, bottled water, and cable TV. So when the futurists talk about what's the future of aging looks like, it looks a lot different than it does today. The paradigms we're working off of are paradigms that we've witnessed. I ask my students, tell me what childbirth is going to be like, knowing that they haven't had children. And they tell me, oh, it's going to be painful. Tell me what menopause is going to be like. And they tell me, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. How do they know that? They know that by what they have witnessed. It's called anticipatory socialization. Your concept of aging is dictated by what you have witnessed. I had a father who died at 55. That's an off-time death. I visited a mother today who's 96. So I've experienced both ranges. You have aunts and uncles that are canoeing, at 90. You have aunts and uncles that are impaired at the age of 50. Your concept of aging has been dictated by what you have witnessed. So my takeaway message for you is get up. And if you don't want to act old, if you don't want to be old, then don't act old. And challenge the systems. So I guess you weren't waving to me, you were telling me, wrap it up.
Only because...
because that's life, that's the program,
Yeah.
There's no reason.
And our next speaker has
arrived.
Has arrived and needs to go to her child within a reasonable time.
So you truly are that sandwich generation of juggling. So are there any quick questions? Because I indicated to you I can't stay long.
Hi, another kid from Brooklyn, 40s and 50s, but I didn't quite get your name, I'm sorry. Dr.
Larry Force, F-O-R-C-E.
Force, okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Comments, questions, reactions? Sandra?
I would very excited to hear you recognize what is needed about seniors becoming invisible. It is so prevalent. It is wonderful you're getting it out of the closet and calling it what it is, and how important it is not to act old.
Right. My first conversation with Matt Janicki back in the 80s, we had a woman up in Rhinebeck, Red Hook, that had an adult daycare program, and she was integrating people with special needs into it. And some of the families that didn't have people with special needs were concerned. And she called me and she said, what should we say? What should I tell these families? This is my first phone call with Matt. I told him what the story was. I said, what should we tell her to tell those families? And he said, tell those families we have attorneys. I said, I like this guy. Because we're not going to come in the back door anymore because we have a disability. Well, let's fast forward. You got to stand up. If you feel as though you're being discriminated against or violated or isolated because of an artificial indicator of age, you got to let people know that's not going to stand, and there's guidelines, federal and state, that will not exclude you because of age. Come on up.
I commend you for your comments about how seniors need, whatever you want to call them, senior needs, myself being one, being engaged in life. That's how I look at it. When I'm engaged in life, I'm active and I do things. I go to the gym, but I also have seen friends of mine who are several years younger than me who act old. They have more problems because I think they see themselves as older people. But I try to be as active as I can and participate in life, and volunteering and helping other people is a very important part of my.
I mean, I think one of a multi-billion-dollar industry is anti-aging.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, you can suck down vitamins, you can lather yourself with all type of ointment, but if you let go of purpose and meaning, you'll age very quickly. It's about purpose and meaning and staying connected and engaged.
You know, aging is very much a social construct, and we buy into it. And that is part of the problem. You know, when you hit 65, you're supposed to be old. You're supposed to retire. There are all these things you're supposed to do. And we willingly engage in doing them. We don't have to. We can make our own decisions.
And also the symbols that go with that. I mean, this is innocent, and there's nothing, sinister about it. But I've been connected with institutions where when you retire after a certain amount of time, they give you a rocking chair. A rocking chair? Why don't you just take me out of the parking lot and shoot me? Okay? If you want to give a rocking chair, then put some dance lessons in it. I mean, we got to get away from the symbols of what it means to retire. It doesn't mean that you just sit there and rock and rock. Come on.
I just have to say, I'm in my 80s, and I never thought I would be working and teaching in my 80s, and you're so right. The 80s are probably what the 70s was like. And it is wonderful to be teaching seniors. And
Well, who's that woman over in Rhinebeck? And please come up, and then I'm done. You're going to present, right? Come on. Who's that woman over in Rhinebeck? What the hell is her name? I forget her name. No, not Nina Lynch. No, she's over in Rhinebeck. I saw her in the McKinsey Journal. What's her name? She's promoting this green drink that she drinks in order to stay young. Joy Gross.
Yeah. How
So-
did you forget her name?
So Joy Gross. So I see this article. I called Joy. I said, look, I'm teaching a course on aging. I'd like you to come into the last lecture because you really, from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, you're really representing what successful aging is. I said, do you need me to send a car for you? She said, a car? She said, have you seen me on YouTube? I said, no. So I go to YouTube, punch in her name, and there she is on her 80th birthday jumping out of a plane. All right, so she didn't need a car, so she drives over. I've been teaching psychological theory for 15 weeks. She comes into my last lecture. I want to leave the kids with an impression of what successful aging is. She gets up there, she has this juice, she has little samples for everybody, and as she's holding out the juice, she said, I want to let everybody know that I'm very proud to tell you all, that I've never had better sex than I've had since I'm after the age of 80. My kids are up there and they're applauding her and stuff like this. the fact is that, you know, I didn't know that she was going to deliver that message, but it's a powerful message that it's never over. It's never over. So thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you
Thank
so
you for your
much.
participation. Thank you. You're the midwife?
I'm the midwife.
Look at this.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. What a powerful way to look at that.
Yep.
So I have to go. I hope you don't mind, okay? But again, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Okay,
you.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, so hi everybody. I'm Susan Rachel Connon. I'm a midwife. I have an office here in New Paltz, an office in Poughkeepsie. Have my own business with a partner who's we're in the same age range. I've been a midwife for about 16, 17 years. And I take care of women across the lifespan. So from the onset of menarche, when women first get their periods and become sexually capable and competent young women until they die, as long as they want to see me. So one of the great things that a lot of people don't know about midwives is that in New York State, licensed midwives have the sort of blessing of the state to take care of women across the lifespan. We do primary care, we do gynecology, we do maternity care, obviously, newborn care, and we can order lab tests and we can prescribe medications. So a lot of people prefer the kind of personalized care that they get, especially in this time when it seems like every time you turn around, medical practices are getting swallowed up by some big corporation that's eating all the hospitals, and then everybody's affiliated, and you have no relationship with your care provider because every time you go, you see somebody different, and everybody's looking at the charts, and they're all getting used to their electronic health records, and they don't really make eye contact with you. And so a lot of people are sort of coming back to midwives because they feel like it's, in most cases, a little more personal, even when the midwives are working in those settings, which some of us do. So I really enjoy spending time working with women on their general health, their sexual health, and feeling good about themselves, their mental and emotional health. So that's why I guess I was invited to speak here. As a point of a personal story, when I went, this is my 20th wedding anniversary this year, and it's very nice, very shocking to suddenly, it was like 5 minutes ago, but apparently not. And on my first honeymoon, I had a 16-month-old toddler with me and my husband, so it was a very different honeymoon than some people's honeymoons might be. And this year on our 20th anniversary, we sent our youngest kid off to camp and we took a real honeymoon. So we just got back from Puerto Rico, and people said, oh, what hotel did you stay at, and what kind of resorts did you go to? Well, we went sea kayaking, we went scuba diving, we went snorkeling every morning, and what else did we do? We did wild and crazy things. We drank alcohol. It was great. We walked on the beach at sunset. We did these things that, were kind of outside the box, and I actually dove to 52 feet, which I never thought I would do. So I'm feeling like, for me, I want to walk my talk, and when I talk about midlife being sort of a bridge between the period of time when many women are either through their careers or in their families caring for others and focusing on others with the bulk of their time, and sometimes that means all through the night, depending. And we sort of set ourselves aside. We set ourselves aside either for a career or for raising families, that we come to midlife and there's sort of this shift that happens. And I've been studying about this a lot recently, that it's almost like a secondary adolescence, that there's this part of us that's been set aside, that's the real us, the inner me, that's been sort of on the back burner, kind of yearning to express itself, and that something starts to happen right around and after 50 for a lot of women, where they start to speak their minds. And they start to feel like, why shouldn't I give voice to my opinion? Why shouldn't I bring myself into this conversation in a way that's not, checked or reserved or anything? And we start being more inclined to ask for what we need, to go after what we want, and to maybe take some new risks, maybe explore some new possibilities. So whereas, kind of bridging onto what Larry was saying, that instead of kind of buying into this old idea of what midlife and older women are supposed to be like and how they're supposed to behave and what they're supposed to speak like and how they're supposed to present themselves, that we actually can break away from that and just kind of bring who we are inside up into our lives and into our practice and our social circles, into our volunteerism, into our work if we're working, into our families, and the way that we engage in the world and express who we are. And that's where you get into the kind of the common thread here of the conversation we've been having about aging as a construct and as something that, when you look at this industry that was referred to a few minutes ago, this anti-aging industry. Aging is something that we do, but we've given it a meaning instead of just having it be part of a biological process. And so I think that for women in particular, that's a big issue. We are taught from the time that we first encounter media what we're supposed to look like, and we're taught what we're supposed to eat, and we're taught who we're supposed to model ourselves after, and what kinds of work are appropriate for us to do, and what kinds of schools we should go to, and education we should have. And a lot of the messages are, of course, much more subliminal than they used to be. But as a midwife, I'm still absolutely shocked when I see a young mother, like a 28-year-old woman, afraid of putting a pink blanket on her son when he's a newborn and doesn't know what pink is. Because, of course, if you put a pink blanket on him, it might make him gay. I mean, this kind of stuff actually still happens, and it's always shocking to me. So there's a lot of it is very subliminal, and while we're becoming a lot more expansive about the way that we view different kinds of families and different kinds of people expressing their sexuality and their orientation and their gender identity, we're at this place in time where we're discussing these things openly, but we're not necessarily comfortable yet. So we're seeing a lot of now young women being told what their breasts are supposed to look like and what their faces are supposed to look like. And it just keeps going through midlife when, you got your breast implants after your babies were weaned when you were in your 30s, and now you're in your 50s and you're thinking you have to have your eyelids done, and you have to have this done, and you have to have that done. So there's a lot of this anti-aging. There are products you're supposed to spend a lot of money on. Plastic surgery is absolutely huge. A lot of OBGYNs now are getting trained in plastic surgery so that when they do your cesarean, they can also give you a tummy tuck at the same time. And there are obstetrician gynecologists who are doing Botox when women come in for a pap smear. It's really very strange to me what's been going on with this. But the message is still there. The message is, you're not okay. You should do something to be different, and you should be different in a way that's constructed for you. And the messages are there in the media all the time. So one of the things that I like to spend a lot of time doing is kind of breaking through some of that. I like this idea of midlife being like a second adolescence, and that you can lose your temper, and you can speak your mind and shock people a little bit. So that's one thing. Let's see, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the physiologic changes that women start to experience through midlife and beyond, and how a lot of times the research sort of focuses on the hard parts and the negative, and again, the things that we need to fix. Like if you have vaginal dryness, you should use this estrogen cream, and if you have sleep problems, you should take Lunesta. And we're now in a medical culture that really relies very heavily on very fancy, expensive laboratory tests and pharmaceuticals to fix the things that the tests provide. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but my sense a lot is that medical care is really about getting information from you about which tests we should order and which drugs we should give you or which kind of therapies we should prescribe. There's not a whole lot of hands-on examination going on anymore. There's not a whole lot of critical thinking going on anymore. I see this all the time when I go into the hospital system. Here's an example of this. I was at the hospital the other day with a woman who was in labor, and the resident came in to the room, and he looked at the monitor strip that's supposed to be showing her contractions and how far apart they are and how long they last and how the baby's responding to them. But because of this woman's anatomy, the machine wasn't picking up the contractions, so it wasn't showing them. And so he looked at it and he said, "Oh, she's not having contractions." And I said, "Sure she is. She's having contractions every 3 minutes and they're lasting about a minute." And he said, but I don't see them. And I said, that's because you're not in the room. You know, and he said, how do you know? And I said, because every 3 minutes she makes a face, and I get up and I look at my watch, and I put my hand on her belly, and I nod at her and say, wow, this one is stronger. And she says, yes, it is. And I said, you know, I'm looking at the person. You're looking at the monitor. And I really feel like this is kind of the dumbing down of medicine, and we're seeing this a lot. So you are the best resources about your own bodies. And so when you go to a provider and you say, this is what's happening with my body, and the person says, you know, well, that doesn't quite, you know, fit in with my thinking about someone your age, you know, it's a problem, because then how do you get responsive health care? So there are truly, as we age and as we move through midlife as women, there are certain impacts of hormonal changes, and yet they don't necessarily dictate how we live and what our quality of life is and what our sexuality, how our sexuality manifests itself. So I wanted to talk about some of these things, but the thing that's so exciting at this point is that we've gotten away from maybe, I would say, let's see, what is it, 2014. In the early to mid-90s, there was a lot of research being done around menopause, and a lot of the research being done was, of course, being done by pharmaceutical companies because they wanted to know how to better target and market their products to women in midlife so that hormone therapy would be very appealing and you know, make you more comfortable, help you avoid distressing symptoms and signs of perimenopause, but also to kind of get you on that track where, you know, you think that a pill is what makes you feel better, and now you're going into this phase of your life and you'll need to take this medicine for a long time, which of course is really nice for the pharmaceutical companies. And what now the research, you know, 20 or so years later, is showing that how a woman feels in her body and how she functions in her body, her cognition, her sexual functioning, a lot of that is much more linked to her physical health and her mental health than it is to where she is in relationship to her menopause. And that's very exciting news, because it opens up this whole door for us to think about, you know, how do we, as we've been saying here all afternoon, how do we continue to take care of ourselves in ways that help us feel better in our bodies and in our lives and in our minds and in our relationships, maintaining our health for the long haul, also kind of having this impact of the anti-aging, if you want to use that, so that rather than having a cream or a medicine, you go to the gym, or you go volunteer somewhere, or you spend time with friends. So in terms of estrogen and decreasing hormone levels, they begin to decrease very, very gradually, starting usually in the mid-40s and then continuing to decrease across the lifespan. And there are periods around the main episode of menopause. So we call menopause when a woman has not had a menstrual cycle for a full year. It's just kind of like you have to define it somehow. But perimenopause is thought to be the 10 years on either side of that. So some women will begin to experience perimenopausal symptoms quite early and not achieve menopause or reach menopause for many years. And other women won't notice anything until they're kind of right in the throes of it. And there's nothing like a woman's body to make medicine really uncomfortable, because it's unpredictable. Everything is unpredictable. You know, one day you have no orgasm, the next time you have 5 orgasms. I don't know why. Does it matter? Not really. But we are very unpredictable, and part of that is because we are responsive to things in a really sort of organic way, I guess. The word organic is weird, but we respond to things. You know, a woman cannot get aroused if she's trying to remember if she let the dog out. Oh, I can't remember if I let the dog out. If I didn't let the dog might poop in the rug. How are you going to get aroused when you're thinking like that? You know, did I lock the door? Did I turn off the lights? We have to kind of be able to let all of that go in order to be able to get aroused. And that's kind of a metaphor for who we are in our lives. We need to feel like we've got things kind of clear, we can see them, so that we can move forward. And I think it's because we've grown up in a generation or two with the expectation that we can manage a lot of things at the same time. So as we move through this period of time, there are estrogen receptors. This is another exciting thing about all that research that was done about estrogen. There are estrogen receptors on many, many tissues in the body.
so that as we have our estrogen levels decrease over the lifespan from midlife on, there's a change in many places. You know, we start to notice the obvious things like that our skin gets a little thinner, maybe we have more vaginal dryness, maybe our hair gets a little bit more brittle. But there's also a big cognitive effect as well. And so that kind of foggy thinking and the short-term memory loss, word recognition. Oh, where is that word? It's right there. Why don't I have it? And it's so frustrating. For some people, that's really temporary. And for some people, you know, it kind of goes in and out, depending on what else is going on in our lives. So there are cognitive effects. If a woman is not feeling fulfilled in her life or her relationships or in her work, there's much greater risk for her to have mood disorders and depression and insomnia and other things that go along with that. So those are other kind of cognitive impacts. For lots of us, our bone density can be an issue. So especially for Caucasian women, slender women, women from Northern European orientation, there's a higher rate of osteopenia, which is a thinning, and osteoporosis, which is a porosity, that can be remedied with regular exercise and supplementation. So my mother-in-law is sort of like, she's my role model. She's 83. She lives by herself. She's a force to be reckoned with. Every morning she puts on her pith helmet and her dark glasses and her sunscreen, and she goes out in the garden and rips the weeds out of the garden. And she's a maniac. I saw her the other day ripping them out of the woods next to her garden. I said, "Why are you doing that? That's the woods." And she said, "If I don't do it, they'll be here by next week." And so she's just fierce. And so this is somebody who eats really well. She had crossed that line a couple of years ago from osteopenia into osteoporosis, and she was not having it. And so she did all this research about what she could do, and her doctor said, no, you must take these pills, you must do this is what we do at this point. And she refused to take the pills, and she reversed it. And they wanted to write a paper about her. So the attitude of, oh yeah, you're going to tell me that I need to be dependent on this pill for the rest of my life, or I won't be able to stand up straight? Not me. That kind of attitude and discovering that with some weight-bearing exercise and some supplements, and just continuing to be really physically active and to do it. She doesn't go to the gym. She goes to the garden. That's her way of being physically active, and she pulls those Virginia creepers off the trees, and it's keeping her strong, and it's keeping her up and looking up and doing something that she finds really satisfying. So that's an example of that sort of thing. There can also be thyroid dysfunction at the same time, so sometimes it's important to make sure that we're not mistaking declining estrogen levels with a declining thyroid, because our thyroid hormones are responsible for regulating our metabolism. So, and thyroid disorders can be really easily treated, either naturopathically or allopathically, depending on your personal bent. Let's see, another thing is adrenal fatigue. Is something that is challenging for people who are working, people who are caring for young children, people who are caring for a person with special needs or an older parent that's living with them. Those kinds of situations can be really, really stressful, especially if a woman is not getting enough restful sleep at night. So if you're either having insomnia or you're caring for people who need special care during the night, so not only do you have to get up, but you have to get up and function, help carry someone, to the bathroom, or lift someone, or turn her over in bed, where you're engaging your mind and you're being physically active, and then it's hard for you to get back to sleep. And then you're still caring for that person during the day. Those kind of situations can be very stressful on the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands produce our stress combating hormones, our cortisol and our norepinephrine. So if your sleep cycles are off and you're under stress, what that can do is make your stress alleviating hormones spike at the wrong time of day. So when your hormone levels, when your cortisol level is supposed to be winding down so that you can go into that restful sleep, but your brain says, oh boy, I'm going to have to get up to feed that baby, or I'm going to have to get up to, help turn over my parents so he doesn't get bed sores, and I'm going to have to, get up early and do my work so that I can then focus on my family. And then you start perseverating and thinking about all the things you have to do, and then your cortisol levels go up when they're supposed to be decreasing, and then you can't fall asleep or you can't stay asleep at the time that you actually might be able to rest. So that can take a huge toll on anybody, but it's particularly a concern for midlife and beyond. I want to talk about urinary stress, incontinence, urinary tract infections, interstitial cystitis, which is an inflammation of the bladder that can feel like a urinary tract infection, but it isn't, and is often mistreated because people don't want to take the time to wait for a urine culture to come back. So for women who are having prolapses of the pelvic organs or urinary problems, obviously they can have a big impact on sex and sexuality for women who have partners. And that can be very, very difficult. And one of the things about having difficulty with bladder control or having pain anywhere in the pelvic area, it can be hard for people to talk about that with a care provider. And so, you know, do you go to a gynecologist or a urologist? Who do you go see? And then, you know, there are women who may find it difficult to talk about it or to talk about how it's impacting their self-esteem or their sexual functioning. So that's another kind of unfortunate byproduct of this institutionalized healthcare that we have now, where every time you go, you see a different person, so you don't have that rapport and you don't feel like this is somebody that I want. You know, here I am, I'm 72 years old. Maybe I have my spouse died 5 years ago, and I have a new partner. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about being tested for sexually transmitted infections. I want to talk about how to protect my sexual health at my age. I want to talk about my vaginal dryness, and I want to talk about the fact that I have some urinary incontinence. It's really hard to talk about that with somebody that you've never met before if you're kind of a reserved person. Me, I'd have no problem with it, but some ladies do. You know? When my son, who's now 19, was 3 years old, he invented this phrase. You know how 3-year-olds come up with the best phrases. And whenever I was trying to explain something to him, you know, he'd ask me a question, and I was trying to say it right, and I was trying to make sure that he understood and everything. And he would see me working really hard to get it, and then he would say, "Mama, just say it in the words." And I thought, oh, that is so good. So we sort of adopted that phrase in our family, and it's like a mantra for me, where, you know, especially now that I'm over 50, I just kind of feel like, yeah, I'm going to say it in the words. I'll just tell you exactly what I think, and there it is. And you can do whatever you want with it. But sometimes it's hard for people when they have, you know, kind of private, personal, and sexual concerns, or that feeling of, you know, I don't want to go to the movies, because what if I have to get up and go to the bathroom, and then I'm going to miss part of the movie. You start to sort of whittle away the nice, fun parts of your life. I can't jump on the trampoline. You know, here's my 12-year-old saying, "Mom, come jump on the trampoline with me," and I'm going, nope, I can't do that. I'll watch you jump on the trampoline. So it's, you know, there are things that we start to kind of cut back because of the changes that some of us experience, which can be dealt with if you get good care, if you know, maybe see a physical therapist about improving your pelvic floor health and learning about your body. I once had a 32-year-old woman say to me, "When the baby drops, does that mean it's not in the uterus anymore?" And I thought, wow, you know, we are doing such a disservice to young women by not teaching them anything about their bodies or their pelvic health. When they go for their health care the first time, we talk to them about birth control. We don't talk to them about what feels good and what doesn't, and how to talk to a partner about, you know, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, that hurts, that feels good, no, do it like this. We don't teach them anything. And so then they get to be in their childbearing years and they're having babies and they have no idea. And then the same thing happens with menopause. Nobody says, "Okay, come on, and we're going to sit down and talk about some of the things that may change for you. And these are the ones that are causes for concern, where you might want to give us a call and come in. And these are the ones that are absolutely perfectly normal. And they might be a little cumbersome for you, and if you feel like you need to talk to somebody about it, you can come in and talk about it, you know? There's nobody really approaches it that way. So that being said, this is a wonderful book that I wanted to show you. If you are not familiar with Christian Northrup, she has written many wonderful, wonderful books, and she's an OBGYN. And what I love about this book, which is called The Wisdom of Menopause, which makes it sound like it's just about the time of menopause, but it really kind of goes forward. It's really the first book that I've seen that approaches, without anger, the real experience of going through midlife and beyond. And it talks about, you know, your physiological health, and it talks about some of the changes that you may have emotionally and spiritually, and some of the ways that you need to take care of yourself. But it also goes through very practical remedies. Here's something that you can do. If you're experiencing this, here's something you can try. And here's the drug version of it, and here's the nutrition version of it, and here's the exercise version of it, and here's meditation, and here's getting a divorce, and here's this. All of these possibilities that lie await for you. So, you know, she does talk about reframing sexual dysfunction and talking about how, you know, what I said before, where if a woman is physically and emotionally healthy and she feels connected with her partner, that, you know, she can clean up unfinished business or speak her mind or say, you know what, now that I'm getting a little older, that thing that used to feel really good is kind of uncomfortable. I don't really want to do it in that position anymore. And, you know, that you're actually shifting the dynamic. And just the act of changing the conversation and being willing to be vulnerable and showing that the intimacy is of value to you, and that, you know, my body is changing in a really significant way. You know, every couple of years it's going to be a significant change, and this is what I want to bring to our relationship. I want to bring my honesty and my vulnerability and ask for what I need. And that when they did interviews with women who had, you know, practiced this, many of them found that the change that happened in the relationship and the change that happened in their sexual satisfaction was as good. They said it was as good as having a new partner, where you have that sparkly feeling, you know. So it was somebody that you'd been with for a really long time. So that was pretty exciting. So fortunately, a lot of the research that's being done on sexuality in the second half of our lives is, you know, focusing more on not how to fix what's broken, but on looking at what's great about it and how you can be having great sex into your 70s and your 80s because you're fully living your life and expressing yourself and staying healthy and you know, connected. So it's called The Wisdom of Menopause, Creating Physical and Emotional Health During the Change. And I recommend it really highly. It's the kind of thing that's very reader-friendly. You can, you know, read a couple pages a night before you go to bed, and you kind of feel like, wow, that was really nice. She starts out with talking about how her divorce was a springboard for her life, you know, after menopause, that she realized that, you know, it was just time to reinvent herself and that was going to be part of it. And she got to look back at what she had earned from her relationship with her husband and what wasn't working and what she needed to shift in herself to have the opportunity to transform relationships in the future. So it's a really healthy way of sort of framing that kind of experience. So there's a lot of good news. There are a lot of things that can be done in terms of nutrition in general, keeping the immune system strong. There are a lot of foods and really good supplements that are generally anti-inflammatory. One of the things that we're learning a lot now is that the way that we respond to disease has a lot to do with inflammation. And so that you can get a lot of benefits from sort of anti-inflammatory foods like the omega-3 fatty acids, which are available in food and also in supplemental form. There are lots of different ways you can get it. Phytoestrogens. Through stress reduction, body-mind kind of exercises. Meditation is huge. Massage and being touched or having a pet that you pat and touch. And I came home after being gone for 2 days this afternoon, and I ran home to change my clothes before I came here, and my dog was so happy to see me, and I picked him up, and I felt like I was having an orgasm. I was just so happy to be loved by this little dog. This is great. Intimacy, connection, you know, everybody's connecting on the internet now. It's really nice to connect with a human being. And one of the things that reduces inflammation and reduces stress is surges of oxytocin. And you can get a surge of oxytocin from having a beautiful meal with your friend. or from getting a massage, or getting a pedicure where somebody's rubbing your feet and you don't look at the TV or look at your iPhone, but you actually experience the person rubbing your feet and feel that connection with someone. Holding hands with your partner, if you have one, as you're taking a walk on the rail trail. All of those things actually improve your oxytocin levels, which helps to reduce stress and inflammation. There are things that you can do that you don't have to slog up a mountain. They're kind of nice, pleasant things to do. 30 minutes of exercise a day, no matter what it is. It can be pulling Virginia Creeper, it can be going for a walk with a friend, but that improves your muscle tone, it improves the oxygenation of your tissues, and just perfusion in general, reduces swelling and improves mood. So exercise is really important. And, you do what you can with what you've got to work with. I do want to say one last thing before I have to go pick up my 12-year-old, because I do have a 12-year-old, which is that there are lots of new rules about medical testing, and there's always controversy about medical testing. And so the rules are very significant for older women. What we have discovered in the last 10 to 15 years, and there's really good research on this, is that most cervical cancer, almost all of it, like 97-98% of cervical cancers, are caused by the human papillomavirus, which is a sexually transmitted infection. And so for women who have been tested and either are not sexually active or have had the same partner for many years, the risk is almost theoretical. So they have changed the rules based on the individual woman's sexual history, her pap history, and her age. And so we're now at the point where if you've never had an abnormal pap smear and you've had a couple within 10 years and they were normal, and you don't have multiple partners or several new partners in that 10-year period, when you're 65, it's over. No more paps. And if you're between 30 and 65, it's every 5 years. Because it takes that long. Cervical cancer is a very slow-growing cancer, and almost anyone who's ever had sex has had HPV. Whether you have male partners, female partners, it doesn't matter. Because it's like a sexual cold. But most women don't get symptoms from it because it comes and goes and it clears because you have a good immune system. So for women who are HIV positive, it's a different thing. They have a really hard time clearing it, and they have a higher incidence of cervical cancer. But a healthy woman with a normally functioning immune system will usually be able to clear most HPV infections. And what we found we were doing was, when we were doing annual cancer screenings, is that we were over-treating. We were doing things like doing biopsies on women before they were having babies, and we were actually causing scarring on the cervix, which then creates complications in pregnancy and birth. So that we've really scaled this way back. And that's something that, if you have the opportunity to spread the word about that, that would be great. Because honestly, the annual pap smear is a cha-ching for doctors. So if you call and say, it's time for my pap, they're not going to argue with you and say, oh no, actually, you should come back in 3 years. They're going to say, sure, come on in. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a physical or a checkup, have your thyroid checked, have a breast exam, all that, but the pap, the invasive part, the part that people don't look forward to, you don't feel guilty if you're 65 years old and you haven't had a pap in a while. It's really okay. If you do have new partners, it's always a good idea to get tested. There are infections like herpes and HPV that can go dormant in the nervous system, and you have antibodies stored, and then you get stressed out, or you start having a lot of sex because you have a new partner, and then you get a herpes outbreak. So if you don't know and you have a new partner, not a bad idea to get tested. Generally speaking, condoms do not protect against the viral kinds of infections. They protect against things like syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia. So, I like to be a kind of a voice and a health and sex educator for people in the community. If you guys want to get in touch with me, I can leave my contact information with Sharon. I'm going to go get my kid. Thank you so much for being here and listening. And
We're going to have, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
you're welcome. Happy to be here.
We're going to break because there's food and drink. We're going to reconvene, and we're going to be talking about caregiving. So this is particularly germane for those of you in the audience who are currently in that situation. I know some people have to leave after we eat. But I urge the people who would like, especially who would like to talk about caregiving, to stay. And I think we'll just break up into a discussion group at that point.